Hello my dear friends and welcome to StudyIQ. I am Joy and today in this lecture we will discuss about the concerns in the Collegium system of appointing the judges. Now let us first look into the current affair. So recently the Supreme Court Collegium, the Collegium is responsible for the appointment or the recommendation of names to the Supreme Court or the higher courts in the country. So the Supreme Court Collegium recently made appointment of 2 judges, but there was a controversy with this appointment. The controversy was that the earlier Collegium had decided the name of other 2 judges and a new Collegium was formed later because one of the judges from the earlier Collegium had retired. So the new Collegium appointed 2 different judges other than those 2 judges which was recommended by the first Collegium. So here we will see that the Supreme Court Collegium has scrapped its own previous decision to appoint 2 judges and made another 2 fresh appointments. So this was the current affair, and based on this let us understand what are the concerns in the Supreme Court Collegium or the Judicial Collegium. Now let us quickly understand what is the background of this current affair. The Supreme Court of India presently has 26 judges. So it means that there is a clear vacancy of 5 judges because the sanctioned strength is 31. So there is a clear vacancy of 5 judges in the Supreme Court. And in the last month, the Supreme Court had recommended the elevation of 2 justices to the Supreme Court. So this recommendation was made by the Supreme Court Collegium itself. So in the last month, the Collegium of the Supreme Court recommended the name of Justice Pradeep Nandrajog and the Justice Rajendra Menon. So Chief Justices of Rajasthan as well as Delhi High Courts. So these 2 names were recommended by the Supreme Court Collegium in the last month. But what happened later in the month of January, exactly on January 10th, a new Collegium was formed, and the reason was that from the previous Collegium or the earlier Collegium, 1 justice had retired. That was Justice Madan Lokar, who retired recently. So from the previous Collegium, Justice Madan Lokar, who was a member of the previous Collegium, he retired and a new Collegium was constituted on January 10th. And this new Collegium recommended the name of entirely different judges. So the earlier recommendation was scrapped by the new Collegium. So this new Collegium recommended the name of Justice Maheshwari and Justice Khanna. So this decision of the new Collegium has scrapped the earlier decision of the earlier Collegium, and this was also criticized, saying that other 32 more senior judges were ignored by this Collegium while making the appointment or by recommending. So there are 2 criticisms against the recent decision of the new Collegium. First one is that the seniority was ignored. That means 32 other justices of different high courts were not considered, who were more senior than the 2 appointed judges, Justice Maheshwari and Justice Khanna. So this was the first allegation. Second allegation or a more severe allegation was that the Supreme Court Collegium has revoked a decision that the Collegium itself had made earlier. So that was the second allegation. So these are the 2 important things to be kept in mind. Now let us understand what is the reason for such a decision made by the new Collegium. So it claims that even though some decisions were made last month, that means in the last month Collegium 2 justices were recommended, this was not done after proper consultations, and proper consultations could not be completed because of the winter vacation in the Supreme Court. And later, when the Collegium met again in the month of January, what happened? The composition of the Collegium had changed because 1 justice from the previous Collegium had already retired. That was Justice Madan B. Lokur. So 2 reasons. 1, proper consultations were not made and the court left for a winter vacation. Second one, the composition had changed because 1 among the members of the Collegium had resigned. So these were the 2 reasons stated by the Collegium in making the fresh appointments. But these 2 reasons or clarifications given by the Collegium lack clarity, and therefore the criticism on the Collegium system is that it is not a very transparent system. So why it is not transparent? Because it is not clear on what basis the appointments are made. So they have just mentioned that it is based on certain consultations or some additional material. But what material or what type of consultation is not very clear, because it is sure that seniority is not the only thing that is considered by the Supreme Court. Because if it was only seniority, 32 other justices in different high courts were more senior than the appointed 2 judges. So seniority is not the sole criterion. Then what are the other criterion apart from seniority? So this is the question. Now this has led to an opaque nature of the collegium system or lesser transparency in the collegium system. Now let us understand what are the concerns associated with the collegium system. Now the first concern is regarding the ground for consideration. So here in this example we have seen that there was an earlier collegium and the collegium had recommended 2 names, but later when one member of the collegium that was earlier constituted changed, the new collegium had recommended new other names. So 2 new names were recommended by the new collegium. So the ground for reconsideration of the decision of the previous collegium is the retirement of 1 member. So it is unclear whether the retirement of 1 member from the collegium is enough or whether it will provide an ample ground to reconsider the decision of the collegium. Now the second concern regarding the collegium's appointment is regarding the criteria. We have seen that seniority is not the sole criteria, and it is widely accepted that seniority is not just the sole criteria while recommending the names to the senior most judicial vacancies. But what is the question here is that what else is the criteria that is considered if seniority is not the sole criteria? Now we have seen the collegium has made appointments to 2 judges and there were 32 other judges who were considered who were more senior than these 2 judges. Now it is clear that seniority is not the sole criteria, but what else makes the other criteria? So this is the another concern. Now the third concern is regarding the credibility of the collegium system. Now the collegium has scrapped the previous decision of the collegium itself. So this has raised a question of credibility with the collegium system. Another concern is that the collegium is not accountable to any authority. So here when there is a lack of accountability to any authority, this is to maintain the independence of the judiciary. It is not accountable to any authority. But here rises the question of transparency. On what parameters does the collegium makes a decision on the appointment of the senior judges? So this is the question. This is again another cause of concern. Now in this regard, the second judge's case of 1993 is very important. So in the second judge's case, the year 1993, the independence of judiciary was identified as very integral part of judiciary and thus it formed the collegium system. So we can say that the second judge's case 1993 is the reason for the formation of the collegium system, and collegium will identify the appointment to the Supreme Court and High Courts. The reason for forming a collegium was to protect the independence of judiciary, and in this regard judiciary was not responsible or not accountable to any other authority in the country. But in the later period what has happened is the lack of transparency. It has created an opaque nature of appointments through the collegium system. And along with that, the judiciary is exempted from the RTI or the Right to Information Act. We will see that almost all major government establishments, government bodies are included under the RTI. So under RTI, authority becomes responsible to the citizens. It creates transparency. The decisions of the authority are made open to the public. But in case of judiciary, we will see that judiciary is exempted from RTI. It is exempted. Therefore, it is not accountable to the public or to any other authority. So these are the concerns associated with the collegium system in India. And what is the way ahead? The collegium system, even though judiciary needs to maintain its independency, the collegium system must be transparent. So it should be able to create transparency in making appointments. That means the ground or the criteria for making appointments must be made open. We have seen seniority is not the sole criteria. So judiciary, being a very important organ of the government, must make transparent appointments. So the criteria must be very clear. The proceedings of the Collegium must be open to the public. So this will ensure accountability of Collegium to the general public, and this will help in raising the confidence of public in the judicial system. So it is very important to build confidence among the citizens on judiciary in order to strengthen the democracy. Now let us discuss a UPSC Mains model question. The question is, critically analyze the process of selection of Supreme Court judges in India and measures to prevent the executive's unnecessary intervention into the judiciary. So this is the question, and based on this you have to write the answers. I will give you a broad outline on how to answer this question. You can attempt to write this question and send your answers to joyce.studyiq@gmail.com. So in the first part you have to give an introduction. So your introduction should be about what is the process of selection, that is the Supreme Court Collegium. What is the composition of the Collegium and on what basis the Collegium identifies or recommends the name of the judges to be appointed. So this should be your introduction, and in the second paragraph you can mention about the merits and demerits of Collegium system, and in the third paragraph you can mention how executive would unnecessarily intervene in the judiciary. For example, the executive can make a delay in appointments process by withholding the recommendation made by the Collegium. This has happened in the elevation of Justice K.M. Joseph. So such examples you can quote here, how executive can interfere and what are the measures that are required to strengthen the Collegium system and also to protect the independence of the judiciary. So this should be your answer, and you can also provide a concluding paragraph. Here you can mention about some of the necessary amendments that are required, or you can provide some suggestions how to bring in more transparency or how to bring in more logic in the process of selection of judges, etc. So this should be your answer. Everyone, please try to attempt this question and please send your answers to joyce.studyiq@gmail.com. Thank you. I wish you all a very good day.